A filthy, mud-covered man stumbled into the billionaire's funeral, barefoot, breathless, and drenched in sweat. "Stop! Don't bury her!" he screamed, his voice slicing through the mourners' cries. "She's not dead." The crowd froze. Gasps rippled across the hall. Perfumed guests stepped back, covering their noses, their eyes wide in disbelief. The pastor dropped his Bible. The coffin lid was half closed. And then, fury. Mr. Henry Houghton, veins bulging, stormed forward and barked, "Security! Take this madman out of my wife's funeral. Now!" But the stranger didn't move. He planted his dusty feet on the marble floor, eyes blazing with something fierce, something true. What secret did this dirty man know? Why did he risk his life to stop the burial? And who really wanted Madame Clarissa Houghton dead? Besties, you better grab your popcorn, hit that subscribe button, and watch till the end, because what happens next will shock you to your bones. The full story.
The cemetery was so quiet you could hear grief breathing. White tents flapped in the wind like restless spirits. Everyone sat under them. Men in dark suits, women in black wrappers and oversized sunglasses. The air was heavy, the kind that smells like fresh cement and tears. In front of them lay a golden casket, shining proudly as if it knew it was holding royalty. Inside it, motionless, pale and cold, rested Madame Clarissa Houghton, the Iron Woman of business, owner of 3 skyscrapers on Aco Atlantic. A legend in heels. Now she lay silent, her empire mourning her. By the grave stood her husband, Mr. Henry Houghton, face squeezed tight, holding a handkerchief that hadn't even touched his tears. He looked like a man rehearsing sadness. The pastor cleared his throat, preparing to start the final prayer. 2 grave workers stepped closer, ready to lower the golden coffin into the earth. And then, "Stop! Don't you dare bury her!" The voice ripped through the quiet like thunder on a wedding day. Everyone froze. Heads turned. Cameras came out faster than prayers. You know Nigerians. No drama escapes their phone lens. At the back of the tent, pushing through the crowd, came a man who looked like he had wrestled with poverty and lost. His coat was brown, torn, and carried memories of every rainy night. His beard looked like it had grown its own village. He carried a dirty old bag stuffed with everything he owned and a bit of mystery. People stepped back, clutching their purses. One old woman whispered, "Who invited this spirit from the street?" Another hissed, "I beg security. Remove that thing before he brings bad luck." But the man didn't stop. He marched forward, eyes blazing with something between madness and truth. He pointed straight at the casket. "She's not dead." He shouted again, "I said don't bury her." The crowd gasped. Henry's face hardened instantly. "Who is this madman?" he barked. The guards moved in, but the man raised his voice again, calm but cutting. "My name is Gabriel, and I swear on everything holy, that woman is not dead." Now the murmurs began. "Eh? What's he saying? He's drunk. Wait, what if?" But Henry wasn't having it. "Take this lunatic out of here," he snapped. "We're mourning, not filming a Nollywood movie." Gabriel stood firm, voice trembling but steady. "Henry," he said softly, "you know what you did, and Dr. Felix knows too." That name hit the crowd like thunder. All heads turned to the left, where the family doctor, Dr. Felix, stood sweating behind his glasses. He froze. His hands clenched the Bible like it could save him. The pastor, who was already halfway into his sermon, looked completely lost. Even the grave workers paused. "Continue, Pastor," Henry ordered, jaw tight. "This nonsense has gone on long enough." But no one moved. Gabriel took another step closer. He stared down at Clarissa, his eyes softening. "Madam," he whispered, "hold on, I'm here." Then louder to the crowd, "Check her mouth. Touch her wrist. Her skin is still warm. They gave her a substance. It slows the heartbeat, cools the body, fools the eyes. It's called Dormixar, but she's breathing, I swear it." A woman in purple lace, Clarissa's aunt, Auntie Evelyn, stood up, trembling. "If there's a chance she's alive," she said carefully, "let's check." Henry spun around, furious. "No! Enough of this madness. She's gone." Dr. Felix confirmed it. "Then let them check," someone said. "Yes," another shouted. "What will it cost to check?" "Abba, are you afraid?" a young man muttered loud enough for others to hear. The murmur grew into a wave. Even the wind seemed to join in. Dr. Felix wiped his forehead, forcing a smile. "Please, let's not entertain hallucinations. I examined her myself." Gabriel cut him off sharply. "You examined her? Or you signed what they told you to sign? She gave you a hospital doctor. She bought your car, and this is how you thank her." Dr. Felix's lips pressed tight. He glanced at Henry, who gave a small shake of the head, a warning, and that was when Gabriel dropped his bag and knelt beside the coffin. "Please," he said gently, "help me lift her a little. She needs air." Everyone watched. The silence was so thick you could hear hearts beating. Auntie Evelyn hesitated, then stepped forward. "Lift her," she whispered. "Just a little." A few men obeyed, including one young mourner in a black suit. Together they raised Clarissa gently. Her face, up close, looked too peaceful to be gone. The cotton in her nostrils was ghost white. "Please," Gabriel said softly, "remove the cotton." Auntie Evelyn's hands shook as she pulled the wool from Clarissa's nose. The crowd leaned in. Then Gabriel reached into his old bag and pulled out a tiny brown bottle. It looked ancient, scratched, but precious. "This," he said, lifting it high, "is the neutralizer. It cancels the Dormixar, just 2 drops. If I'm wrong, she stays still. But if I'm right..." Henry lunged forward. "You put that thing near her. I'll..." But 2 mourners stepped in front of him. "Let him try," one said. "If it fails, we bury. If it works, we thank God." Henry's face turned red. "Then what? You all just let a street beggar pour nonsense into my wife's mouth?" Auntie Evelyn's voice sliced through his anger. "Then we see the truth, Henry." Gabriel twisted the lid open. The scent of herbs filled the air. His hands no longer shook. Purpose had steadied them. "Please hold her mouth open a little," he whispered. Auntie Evelyn obeyed. The young man lifted Clarissa slightly. The whole crowd leaned in, phones raised. Even the wind stopped moving. Gabriel held the dropper above her lips. His voice was a prayer. "Come back, madam. They almost buried you alive." 1 clear drop fell. Nothing. He waited. 1, 2, 3. Still nothing. 4, 5. The crowd began to murmur again. Henry smirked. "You see, he's insane," but Gabriel ignored him. He lifted the dropper again. "Just 1 more," he whispered. Henry shouted, "Don't you dare!" Auntie Evelyn raised her palm. "Quiet!" Gabriel squeezed. A second drop fell, and in that split second, before it even touched her tongue, a faint sound escaped Clarissa's throat. "Was that a cough?" someone gasped. The drop touched. Clarissa's throat moved. Her lips twitched. And then chaos. Women screamed. Men shouted. Phones flashed. The pastor dropped his Bible. Someone fainted. Clarissa's eyes fluttered open. Just slightly, but enough. Her chest rose in a weak breath. Auntie Evelyn grabbed her hand, sobbing. She's warm, I tell you." Gabriel's eyes filled with tears. "I told you," he whispered, trembling. "She's alive." The crowd erupted, prayers, screams, cries, all mixing in one holy confusion. Henry staggered backward, face drained of blood. Dr. Felix froze like a man seeing his sins stand up from a coffin, and under the golden casket the wind lifted again, but this time it didn't sound mournful. It sounded like justice. For a moment no one moved. It was as if time itself held its breath. Madame Clarissa's chest was rising and falling, weak but steady. Her lips parted and a faint cough slipped through. Then another, stronger. The world stood still. But Henry Horton, the grieving husband in a perfectly pressed black suit, was not moved. His eyes, cold, sharp, twitched with fury. Something dark and ugly twisted his face. And then, in one quick motion, his hand dove into his inner pocket. The crowd gasped. Metal flashed under the sun. It gleamed, small but deadly. Gabriel's breath hitched. Was that a knife, a syringe, or something worse? Henry's voice cracked through the air, wild, desperate. "Stay back! Do you hear me? She belongs in the ground." The crowd stumbled backward. Women screamed. Men grabbed their wives. Mothers yanked children under their wrappers. Even the pastor dropped his Bible and shouted, "Blood of Jesus!" 2 men in black suits, Clarissa's security team, lunged forward to stop Henry, but grief had made him strong, or maybe guilt had turned to madness. He shoved them off like twigs, but not Gabriel. The scruffy stranger didn't move an inch. His tattered coat flapped in the wind, his beard trembling, but his voice came out like thunder rolling across the sky. "Look at her, Henry! Look at her!" Henry froze. She's breathing. Every head turned toward the casket, and there it was, clear as daylight. Madame Clarissa's chest, slowly lifting, slowly falling. Another cough, louder this time, burst from her lips. Her eyelashes fluttered, her fingers twitched, a cry broke through the air. "She's alive!" It was Evelyn, her elder sister, tears streaking down her face. "Oh, dear Lord, she's alive." The crowd erupted in gasps, whispers, and trembling shouts. Some fell to their knees, some clutched each other, and some were already on the phone live-streaming history. Clarissa's lips moved. A whisper scraped through her throat. Why? Henry froze, his knuckles white around the metallic object in his hand. Clarissa's eyes opened, just a little. Weak, blurry, confused. She looked straight at the man looming over her. Her voice came again, hoarse but sharp enough to pierce hearts. Henry? Why? That one word shattered him. The fury drained out of Henry's body like water from a broken jug. His hand trembled. The object slipped from his fingers and hit the concrete beside the grave. Clink. A syringe, half filled with cloudy liquid. The crowd gasped in unison. Even the wind seemed to whisper, wickedness. The guards pounced, pinning him to the grass. Henry kicked, screamed, fought, but it was useless. His mask of sorrow cracked wide open, revealing pure rage underneath. No, he roared. She was supposed to be gone. Do you hear me? Gone. His voice broke. The crowd's silence became judgment. Every eye turned next to Dr. Felix, the family doctor. He had stepped back, sweat pouring down his face, his collar suddenly too tight. I pronounced what I saw, he stammered. I swear, she had no pulse. I thought she was gone. Gabriel's voice sliced through the air. Liar, everyone flinched. You helped him. You signed her death knowing she still lived. The doctor looked around helplessly, his lips moving but no words coming out. His silence said more than his lies ever could. Clarissa coughed again, this time stronger, her body fighting back. Evelyn rushed to her side, helping her sit upright. Her hair, once perfectly styled, now spilled across her shoulders. Sweat ran down her pale face. But her eyes, oh, her eyes, burned with fire. She turned her gaze toward Henry. Tears rolled down, but her voice cracked like thunder. What did I ever do to you, she asked, to deserve this? Henry stared at her, his jaw tight, eyes darting everywhere but at her face. I gave you everything, she continued. I gave you power. I trusted you with a branch of my empire. I loved you when the whole world whispered you were beneath me. And this, she gestured weakly toward the syringe, this is your thank you? The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some shook their heads, some wept. Others glared at Henry like he was death himself. Then Clarissa turned her gaze to Dr. Felix. Her voice was trembling now, breaking under betrayal. And you, she spat. I gave you a car, I lived you when you had nothing, and this is how you repay me? The doctor's lips quivered. But no excuse could out. The truth was heavy on his tongue. Clarissa's strength began to fade. Her body swayed, but before she could fall, Gabriel was there, quick, steady, gentle. His rough hands, the same hands that had dug through trash, now held a billionaire like she was glass. Easy, madam, he said softly. You're safe now. She looked up at him, eyes watery, voice trembling. Who are you? Gabriel hesitated. He looked down, shame and sorrow in his eyes. Just a man who knew the truth, he said quietly. I overheard Henry yesterday in his car. He spoke of aquarial silence, of how your empire would be his by more. I couldn't let it in. Not again. The crowd leaned in. Not again? What did that mean? Clarissa clutched his sleeve. Her voice cracked, raw with emotion. You saved me, she whispered. You gave me back my life. Behind them, Henry screamed again, thrashing against the guards. She should be mine. Everything should be mine. His words fell flat, drowned by prayers rising from every corner. Women cried. Men shook their heads. Some clapped their hands, shouting, God Parsana! Wickedness no go reign forever! In the distance, sirens wailed. The sound grew louder, sharper. Police vehicles burst through the cemetery gates, their red lights spinning across marble tombs and broken hearts. The crowd parted. The officers marched in. The guards handed Henry over, his expensive suit now stained with grass and shame. One of the policemen read the charges aloud, voice stern. Mr. Henry Horton, you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. The crowd gasped again, though at this point they were running out of breath. Dr. Felix's legs gave way. He dropped to his knees, sobbing into his palms. It wasn't supposed to go this far, he cried. But nobody cared. Through it all, Gabriel said nothing. He just held Clarissa steady as she sat upon her own casket, pale, weak, but alive. The woman they buried too soon, sitting up like a queen who refused to die. Flashlights danced across Gabriel's face, every wrinkle, every scar now glowing with truth. He was no longer a beggar, no longer a madman. He was the voice that had stopped death itself. Clarissa turned to him, tears flowing freely. Her words came out as a whisper, heavy with gratitude. Thank you for saving me. The crowd stood frozen, shocked, humbled, and forever changed. And as the sirens faded into the distance and Henry was dragged away kicking, everyone knew one thing for certain. Death came close that day. But truth came closer. And somewhere between a grave and a heartbeat, a forgotten man became a hero. Days after, the courtroom was chaos wrapped in silence. Every seat was taken. Every inch of space was filled, people squeezed shoulder to shoulder, necks stretched high just to get a glimpse. Outside, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters whispered into microphones, their voices trembling with the thrill of history. The headlines already wrote themselves. Billionaire Madame Clarissa Houghton, back from the dead. Husband and family doctor on trial for attempted murder. It was more than a court hearing. It was a national spectacle, the kind that made even market women pause their trading to ask, "You don't hear say Madame Clarissa don resurrect?" And then the doors opened. Clarissa walked in slowly, not with her old elegance, but with the strength of a storm that refused to die. On her left was Gabriel, the scarred man who had dragged her out from the jaws of the grave. On her right, her elder sister Evelyn, holding her hand like one afraid she might collapse. Her gown was simple, far from her usual diamonds and power suits, but when she entered, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. Even those who came to mock stood in silence. The dead had walked back among the living, and she had come to face her murderer. At the defense table sat Henry Houghton, her husband, the man once praised as the gentleman of gold. Now he looked nothing like the charming face on magazine covers. His skin was pale, his lips twisted in arrogance he could barely hold together. Gone was the grieving widower act. This was the real Henry, cold, empty, and cornered. Beside him sat Dr. Felix, the family doctor, his face glistening with sweat, his collar sticking to his neck. His trembling hands couldn't even keep still on the table. If guilt were a person, it would look exactly like him. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with a voice that could cut iron, banged her gavel. This court is now in session. The state versus Henry Houghton and Dr. Alfred Moore. Charges: attempted murder, conspiracy, and medical malpractice. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Cameras clicked. Somewhere in the back someone whispered, "Omo, this one passed Nollywood." The prosecutor rose, calm, confident, voice like steel. "My lord, this is not just a story of greed. It's a masterpiece of wickedness. A husband and a doctor plotting to bury a woman alive just to snatch her empire." He pointed at Henry, his voice rising. "This man, this charming devil, mixed a slow poison into his wife's food, a toxin that slows the heartbeat until even a doctor would call you dead. And this one," he jabbed his finger at Dr. Felix, "this one signed her death certificate and pushed for her burial." Gasps filled the hall. Henry smirked, adjusting his cufflinks as if the whole thing bored him. "I deny every word," he said smoothly. "This is all a fairy tale told by a homeless lunatic and a woman too frail to face her own body's failure. My wife was dying and I accepted it. That's not a crime." Clarissa shot to her feet, her voice trembling but fierce. "You monster," she shouted, tears burning in her eyes. "You poisoned me. You and that coward beside you. You watched me die, you buried me like garbage, and you thought no one would ever know." "Order," the judge snapped, but even she couldn't kill the storm in the room. The prosecutor lifted a small glass vial sealed in an evidence bag. "My lord, this was found beside the grave. It contains the same paralytic toxin in Clarissa's system, strong enough to make a heartbeat invisible. Only a trained doctor could confirm life, and yet this doctor declared her gone." The courtroom turned toward Dr. Felix. He broke. Tears ran down his face. I was threatened," he stammered. "Henry said he'd ruin me, destroy my career. He said I'd lose everything if I didn't help. I swear I didn't want to. I was afraid." Clarissa's eyes blazed. "Afraid? You signed my death. You let them put me in a box. You let them lower me into the earth while I was still breathing." The doctor collapsed in sobs. "Forgive me, Clarissa, please." The prosecutor stepped closer to the judge. "My lord, we have the poison. We have the syringe. We have the confession. And we have one more thing. The witness who risked his life to speak the truth." The crowd murmured as all eyes turned toward Gabriel. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's the homeless man. The one who stopped the funeral. The one who shouted that the corpse moved." The judge nodded. "Mr. Gabriel Cole, please step forward." Gabriel rose. His clothes were clean now, his scars less frightening, but his eyes held the pain of a man who had seen too much. He took the oath with trembling lips and stood before the court. The prosecutor asked gently, "Mr. Cole, tell us what you witnessed." Gabriel lifted his head, voice steady, strong. "The night before the burial, I was sleeping under the bridge. I heard a car pull up. 2 men inside, Henry and the doctor. They were arguing. Henry said, 'The poison worked, she's cold already. Tomorrow we bury her before anyone suspects.'" Gasps again. The room felt frozen in shock. Gabriel continued, his voice breaking only once. "The doctor said he was scared. Henry told him, 'Do as I say or I'll destroy you.' That's when I knew something was wrong. I followed them the next day to the cemetery. When they brought the coffin, I saw her hand move. I shouted for them to stop. They called me crazy, but I knew what I saw. I couldn't let them bury her alive." He paused, voice trembling. "I lost my wife and daughter years ago. I couldn't save them. I wasn't going to lose another innocent soul to silence." For a moment, even the judge was quiet. Clarissa's eyes filled with tears. She whispered softly, "God bless you, Gabriel." Then came the defense lawyer, sharp suit, sharper tongue. "So we are to trust the word of a beggar," he sneered. "A man who lives under bridges? How convenient. How do we know he didn't imagine all this, or worse, wasn't paid by Madame Clarissa's Huzo enemies?" Gabriel's face hardened. "I may be poor, I may have nothing, but I don't sell the truth. I speak it." The courtroom broke into murmurs of respect. The judge leaned forward, her glasses glinting. "This witness has spoken with courage. Let the court weigh his words against the evidence." Henry slammed the table. "They're lying, all of them." But this time his voice cracked, his mask slipped, the gavel struck again. Order. By the time the first day ended, everyone knew one thing: Henry's empire was falling. The man who once walked above others was now knee-deep in shame, undone by the very people he once dismissed. A loyal wife he tried to kill, and a scarred stranger he called mad. And when the court adjourned, cameras flashed again. But this time they weren't chasing Henry. They were chasing Gabriel, the man the world had once ignored, and Clarissa, the woman who rose from her own grave. It wasn't just her resurrection. It was his too. Because sometimes the people you call nobodies end up rewriting history. So 2 weeks later, the courtroom was overflowing. Every seat, every aisle, every inch of space was packed with people, journalists, bloggers, ordinary citizens, all eager to see how the most talked-about trial of the decade would end. The case of Madame Clarissa Holton, the billionaire who was buried alive by her own husband, had shaken the entire country. Outside, TV cameras flashed non-stop. The world wanted justice, and today justice had come to sit in court wearing a black robe. Clarissa sat quietly beside her elder sister, Evelyn, her face calm but her eyes red from sleepless nights. In front of them and on another row sat Dr. Felix, the man who had once been their trusted family doctor, now a pale shadow of himself. He refused to look at Clarissa. His shoulders were bent as if carrying the weight of 10 mountains. Every now and then his lips moved silently, muttering prayers that no one could hear. Whenever evidence was projected on the big screen, his fingers trembled like leaves in a storm. This was the 4th day of the final hearing, and the air in the courtroom could slice butter. The prosecutor rose, a slight smirk tugging at his lips. "My lord, we have one last witness, one who drove Madame Clarissa on the night she was declared dead." He turned dramatically toward the gallery. Mr. Charles Benson. A tall man with kind eyes and broad shoulders stepped forward. The murmurs in the courtroom hushed instantly. Charles removed his cap and bowed slightly. "Good morning, my lord." "Speak freely," the judge said, adjusting her glasses. Charles cleared his throat, his deep voice steady but emotional. "That night, Madam was gasping for air. I rushed her to the hospital like a madman. When we reached the gate, Dr. Felix came out. I told him, 'Doctor, please let me stay. Let me help.' But he waved me off. He said it was private and that he would handle everything. I begged him, my lord, but he refused. 2 hours later, he came back out and said she was gone." A shocked wave rippled through the courtroom. Clarissa covered her mouth. Evelyn held her hand tight. Charles lowered his eyes. "I knew something was wrong. Madam was weak, yes, but not gone. I should have fought harder. I failed her." The prosecutor nodded solemnly. "So, Mr. Benson, to confirm, Doctor, Felix denied you access, kept her isolated, and did not allow any second medical opinion. Charles nodded. Yes, sir. No one else was allowed near her. The defense lawyers exchanged nervous glances. Their carefully built defense was collapsing faster than a house of cards in a thunderstorm. You could almost hear their careers weeping quietly. Then the toxicologist walked in, carrying charts and a laptop. He spoke in a calm, serious tone. The substance we found in Madame Clarissa's bloodstream and the syringe recovered at the burial site is a rare compound extracted from pufferfish. It can freeze the muscles, slow the heart, and make a person appear dead even when they are alive. Without advanced equipment, even a trained doctor could mistake it for death. The room fell silent. The air was thick enough to choke on. The prosecutor folded his arms. So, Doctor, this was no accident? Not in the slightest. The toxicologist replied coldly. This was deliberate. It was meant to mimic death. You could hear the whispers around the courtroom. Lord have mercy, buried alive. The judge turned sharply to the dock where Henry Horton sat. He was pale, his once proud face tight with suppressed fury. Mr. Henry Horton, the judge said, her voice firm. You've heard the evidence, the witnesses, and the science. Do you have anything to say before this court passes judgment? Henry rose slowly. The smirk on his lips was gone, replaced with something darker, twisted. He looked at Clarissa like she was a ghost haunting his nightmare. Yes, my lord, he began, his voice rough. I have something to say. The entire room leaned in. I loved Clarissa once, he continued, but she stopped loving me the moment her company went public. Suddenly she was everywhere, on magazine covers, in board meetings, in interviews. The billionaire queen. But what about me? Her husband. I became invisible in my own house. She made all the decisions, carried all the glory. What was I? A title on paper, a man living in her shadow. Clarissa flinched as if struck. The courtroom buzzed. Henry's eyes glowed with madness. Yes, I wanted it all. I wanted what was mine. If she had to die for me to finally live like a man, then so be it. Gasps tore through the courtroom. The judge slammed her gavel. Order, order. But chaos had already broken loose. People shouted, some cursed. Evelyn broke into tears. Clarissa stood, trembling but strong, her voice rising over the storm. You fool, she cried. Love isn't stolen, Henry. Respect isn't forced. I gave you everything, my home, my trust, my heart, and you traded it for greed. You tried to bury me, but now you've buried yourself. Henry's face twisted. I regret nothing, he shouted, his voice echoing. The guards rushed to hold him down as he fought, spitting curses. Dr. Felix, beside him, broke into sobs and collapsed onto the floor. Forgive me, my lord, the doctor cried. Forgive me, Clarissa. I betrayed my oath. I should have saved you, but I chose money. I deserve death. The judge's gavel struck again. Boom! Silence. Her voice was steady. This court has heard enough. She turned to Henry first. Henry Horton, you are guilty of conspiracy, attempted murder, and betrayal of trust. You tried to bury a living soul for greed. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labor. May every day in chains remind you of the life you tried to destroy. Henry screamed as they dragged him away, shouting, It was supposed to be mine, all mine. The judge turned to Dr. Felix. And you, doctor, who swore to protect life, but chose to profit from death, you shall also serve life imprisonment. You will never again hold the fate of another in your hands. Dr. Felix collapsed into his chair, sobbing, as police carried him out. The gavel struck one last time. Court dismissed. The hall exploded. Some clapped, some wept. Others whispered prayers. Cameras flashed. Journalists bolted for the door. Clarissa sat still, her hands trembling. It's over, she whispered. But beside her, Gabriel, the man who had saved her from the grave, shook his head softly. No, madam, it's only the beginning. You have your life again. What will you do with it now? Clarissa turned to him, tears glistening. I wouldn't be breathing without you. You gave me back my life. Gabriel looked away. I only did what I couldn't do before. I once lost my wife and daughter. I couldn't save them. But this time I couldn't stand by. Clarissa placed her hand gently on his. Then maybe this time, fate gave us both a second chance. From that day, she refused to let Gabriel return to the bridge where he slept. You gave me life, she said. Now let me give you one. At first, Gabriel protested. Madam, I'm used to the streets. I don't belong in a place like this. Clarissa smiled. You belong wherever grace finds you. So Gabriel moved into a small guest room on her estate. At first he helped carry files and run errands, but little by little his brilliance began to shine. One afternoon during a tense meeting, the company's main presentation crashed. The board panicked. Investors were losing patience. Gabriel quietly walked to the laptop, typed a few lines, and rebooted the entire system. The slides came back on. The room gasped. "Where did you learn that?" one director asked. Gabriel smiled faintly. "Before life broke me, I was a software engineer." Clarissa's eyes softened. "Then from this day forward," she said proudly, "you are no longer my helper. You are my advisor." The board murmured in surprise, but no one dared challenge her. Gabriel bowed slightly. For the first time in years, he stood tall again, no longer a forgotten man, but a reborn one. Over time, Clarissa and Gabriel grew close. They often sat in the garden, talking late into the night, about loss, about faith, about life's strange mercy. Clarissa found peace in his honesty, strength in his scars. Sometimes she caught herself wishing, just maybe, that fate would let her love again. But fate had other plans. One cool evening, under the soft glow of Clarissa's garden lights, Gabriel smiled shyly. "Madam," he began, scratching the back of his neck, "there's something I need to say." Clarissa looked up from her teacup, her heart drumming. "What is it, Gabriel?" He hesitated, eyes darting between the floor and her face. I never thought I'd find peace again, but somehow, working with you, rebuilding everything, it gave me life. You gave me life." Clarissa's lips parted slightly. She didn't move, afraid one wrong breath might break the moment. He continued softly, "You believed in me when I couldn't even look at my own reflection. You brought me back." Silence fell. The night breeze rustled the roses nearby. Clarissa smiled faintly, but her eyes shimmered with tears. "Gabriel," she whispered, "you're not the man who used to sleep under the bridge anymore. You're the man who helped me find my strength again." He chuckled nervously. Maybe we helped each other. For days, Clarissa couldn't shake his words. She replayed them while signing documents, during meetings, even while sipping coffee in her study. The once broken man she rescued had quietly become her anchor. A year after the trial, on a quiet evening after work, she did something no one expected. Clarissa Horton, the woman who once ruled boardrooms with iron grace, walked into the office lounge holding a small velvet box. Gabriel was by the window, typing a report, when she called softly, "Gabriel?" He turned, surprised. "Madam?" She stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. "Do you believe in second chances?" He frowned, confused but smiling. "Of course." "Good," she whispered, opening the box to reveal a ring, "because I think we deserve one. Together." For a moment, Gabriel stood frozen as if the world had stopped spinning. "Clarissa, are you—" "Yes," she said simply, her eyes glistening. "I'm asking you, Gabriel, will you marry me?" He blinked, speechless, tears threatening to spill. "Madam, I don't deserve," she laughed softly. "Oh, stop that. You've earned more than you know. So what do you say?" Gabriel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, laughing and crying at once. "Yes! 1,000 times, yes!" The mansion staff cheered when they heard the news. The media called it the love story that rose from the grave. Her wedding broke headlines, not for the wealth, but for the grace in it. No designer overkill, no celebrity parade. Just elegance, laughter, and two hearts that had learned to breathe it again. Clarissa walked down the aisle in a simple ivory gown, her smile brighter than any diamond. Gabriel waited at the altar, tears in his eyes as he whispered, "From ashes to dawn." She squeezed his hands. Forever. Their union didn't just rewrite their lives, it rewrote the company's story. Under their joint leadership, Clarissa and Co. thrived like never before. Gabriel's sharp, tech-savvy insights blended perfectly with Clarissa's bold business mind. Together they became the power couple everyone admired, respected not for their wealth, but for their humility, teamwork, and compassion. Employees often said, "They don't run this company like bosses. They run it like family." Every decision they made echoed grace, from scholarships for the poor to shelters for the homeless. Gabriel never forgot where he came from, and Clarissa never forgot who lifted her when she fell. Years rolled by, and their love only deepened. They travelled, laughed, and built schools in the names of those they once lost. One sunny afternoon, they sat in the garden, the same spot where he once confessed his gratitude. Clarissa leaned against his shoulder, watching the sky turn gold. Children's laughter drifted from afar, the sound of employees' kids playing near the fountains. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked softly. "Only when I want to remember how far we've come," Gabriel replied, kissing her hand. Clarissa smiled. "We lived through death, Gabriel. Now we live for life." He nodded. "And together we turned ashes into something beautiful." Their story became more than just a romance. It became a reminder that second chances exist, that love can grow from ruin, that grace can rise from graves. And so Madame Clarissa Horton and Gabriel, once strangers bound by pain, spent their days not chasing power, but peace. Their laughter filled the mansion once haunted by betrayal. Their hands, once trembling with fear, now built futures together. And as the sun set each evening, painting the world in gold, one truth echoed through their lives: from ashes dawn will always come. And so, besties, from pain came peace, from betrayal came beauty, and from ashes dawn truly rose. Madame Clarissa and Gabriel's story reminds us that life doesn't end where we fall. It begins when we rise again. No matter how dark your chapter looks right now, remember, the story isn't over until grace speaks. Forgiveness heals, love restores, and hope never dies. Besties, if this story touched your heart, drop a love emoji in the comments and tell me. What did you learn from Clarissa and Gabriel's journey? Would you give someone a second chance like Clarissa did? Or would you start over like Gabriel? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful life stories that will lift your heart and inspire your soul. Let's keep spreading love, light, and hope, one story at a time.